In this video, I am going to show you some fun and easy ways to animate your words, your type. You could animate whatever you want. There's a ton of ways to animate things in Fresco that you can't do in other applications. It makes it so easy. It's a lot of fun. You can make some stickers for social media. You can make some video graphics. You could do whatever you want. You want to learn how to do this stuff? All right, let's get into it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to make some 3D type where your lettering just pops off the page. We're going to use this simple treatment for the word pow because it's a perfect word to just pow right off the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is duplicate our lettering onto another layer and then shrink it down to the center. If you use the modifier and transform, it'll shrink right perfectly to the center. And I did this on another layer so we can use it afterwards, but all we really need is that overall shape to use as our basis for the 3D. So I'm gonna make a selection of that smaller one and then come back to our main lettering layer. And then I'll fill in that selection on our main lettering layer in black. And then this will just be the center point for our 3D thing. Once that's filled in, I can just go in and draw lines connecting the points from the main lettering to the 3D part. That sounds confusing, but it's really just connect the same part to the same part of the letter. Then we'll just go in and fill those in. And now we've got a pretty effective looking 3D, 2D, 3D type situation here. So at this point, we've got our starting thing and then the 3D thing, but we don't want it to start at the same size, so we need this to be smaller. So I'll do a second frame in between those two that's smaller, just sort of not full 3D action yet, but like in between. I like to do this one closer to the original size so that it looks like it maybe starts slow and then gets big fast. That just makes it look a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fun. And then I'm just gonna eyeball in those lines to sort of match where they are on the 3D one that we made from the selection. So now I can get rid of that first one and then go and copy and paste my smaller one as a starting point. And then I'll just duplicate that a few times so it's not just immediately going. And then an easy way to make it bounce back is to duplicate that middle frame in between the two and then put it to the end. And that way it'll loop nicely where it's just going small, big, small, big, small, big. Then once we have that structure, we can kind of go in and enhance it a little bit. One of the ways that I like to do this is to go to that main big pop section and then use the Liquify tool with the bloat and just sort of warp it out so it gets even bigger. And you'll see you can get pretty dramatic here and just make it really big because you really need to exaggerate when you're doing frame by frame animation. If you just do it a little bit, it's not really gonna be noticeable. So you really gotta push that. And you'll see here, it gives it some shape, makes it a little bit more bulbous and a little more pow. I think it's pretty fun. What you can do to make it even better and give it more bounce is to go to the frame after that where it shrinks back a little bit smaller and then use the pucker to squeeze that in, and then you get this really dynamic bounce back and forth. As I play this, one thing I'm noticing is it looks a little bit like it's flashing because there's no black on that on the shadow when it's flat because it's not 3D. But I think it looks a little bit weird. So what I'm gonna do is just go in and just add a little bit of that 3D depth to the other ones, just to make it so it's less of a jump from not 3D to 3D. So maybe it just starts off a little 3D. And look at that, pow! I think that helps. It's less flashy in the center of the O. We got some bounce in 3D type. It's pretty easy, right? All right, let's do another way. Okay, the next way is probably the one I should have started with because it's the most simple to understand. This is called a line boil, and it just is a way to give your lettering some wiggle, give it that old school animation look. And all you have to do here is just take your drawing and then trace it 2 more times so that you have 3 frames. The key is just that 3 will give a natural vibration, just sort of a bounce, wiggle to it. But if you just did 2, it would look a little bit like flashing. Not that kind of flashing, but just flashing back and forth. I picked this lettering treatment for this because it has some wiggle to it. I find that when I do this with some wiggly type, it's extra wiggly fun. Something to keep in mind when you're doing this is that you do not need to try to make the line boil. You can trace it very accurately, getting as close as you can without being psychotic, and it's gonna have that natural line boil. If, on the other hand, you go in there trying to make it wiggle and thinking, oh, I need to move this out a little bit like that so it goes like this, it's gonna look crazy. It's gonna be like blah, 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 blah. You don't want that. Line boil is a term in animation that just sort of explains that little bit of wiggle that happens when you're doing frame by frame animation. And if you look at some old cartoons and like even original Disney movies that were done frame by frame, you will see some line boil there. And these animators were not trying to have line boil, they wanted it to not be there, but it just happens. So that should tell you that you're gonna get line boil just tracing it normally. So now that I've traced this 2 other times, we can hit play and we'll see the line boil. And as I look at this, I notice that spot in the A really stands out to me because the center of the A just kind of keeps going pop, 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 pop. So an easy way to fix this is you just go into your frames with your onion skins turned on and you can just see where those big gaps are. So I'll just go in and just try to make them a little bit smaller, close them up a little bit, and then I'll try playing it again and it will be smooth. Smooth boil. We want a little bit of wiggle, we just don't want a distracting wiggle. You don't want to be drawn to like one weird spot of a letter, you want it to just all have that rhythm to it. This is something that I really like. I love the look of this just like analog thing. I use it on my website. I drew my name 3 times so that it's just wiggling at the top of the page all the time. I think it's kind of fun. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is animate a piece of our lettering to enhance the meaning of the word. Well, in my example, I have the word buy. I got a little hand on the end of the tail of the Y. That's like, it looks like it's waving. I think it's pretty effective as is, but it would be even better if it was waving a little bit. So I'm gonna show you 2 different ways to do this. The first way is the easiest and it doesn't require any other drawing. We're just gonna use the Liquify warp tool to push the hand back and forth. This can be pretty good and work okay, but I find that this kind of thing can have a little bit more life and a little bit more energy and fun if you do it frame by frame, at least part of the way. So let's show you the first way first with the Liquify. So before I do the Liquify, what I'm gonna do is cut out the Y from the other letters. The reason I'm gonna do this is because when you're using Liquify, sometimes you wanna use a bigger brush to get broader movements. And if I did that, it may start affecting the other letters. And we don't wanna do that, we just want the hand to wave. I don't wanna start dealing with having that E smush in and looking weird. So having the Y on its own layer allows us to do this without worrying about the other letters. So I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate 6 of these because I think 6 is probably a good amount of frames to get that back and forth. I think if it was just 3, it would just be like, ah, which you could be going for that look. And if you wanna do that, you could do that. So I'm just coming in here, grabbing the warp tool, finding a size that's bigger than the hand and get some of that wrist, the Y wrist, if you will. And then I'm just gonna take a couple frames where I bring it back down this way and then start pushing it back the other way and then try to end it a little bit before that center point, which is where the animation starts. That way it can loop nicely. As you can see, when you're using the warp tool, the hands start to smush a little bit and you can go in there and sometimes and like bring down the size of the warp, maybe fix the part that is getting smushed, like that thumb. Use a little bit of a smaller one here. And you can just scooch that in, make it a little less weird. The Liquify naturally gives it sort of like a rubbery look, which, I think is pretty good. I think that works pretty well. But if we do it frame by frame, we can start moving the fingers a little bit more and just give it a little bit more life. So for this, what I'm gonna do is come in on the second layer and just cut off the hand. I'm gonna cut the hand right off. Chop. Then make a bunch of frames without a hand. And then I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate that first one and put it at the end to use as a temporary guide so that I can get back to that position so that it doesn't have like a weird glitch at the end where it has to restart, because we want that seamless loop. Once I get the other frames in place, we can delete that one at the end. But I'm gonna start without even thinking about the hand here. I'm just gonna do the arm movement. And then once I feel like that's good, then I'll go in and draw the hands on top of that. This will allow me to sort of dial in that motion that I want without having to draw the hands and make them look good. Because once I know this works good, then we can just adapt the hand to fit the wrist. We can put the hand on the wrist. We're not gonna let the hand wave the tail wag the dog, if you will. Oftentimes when I'm doing this, I'll go in and adjust the onion skin opacity a little bit. Sometimes I like to just see the frame before and the frame after, but in something like this, it might be helpful to see a bunch of frames so I can see that sequence going. So once I've gone over to the left a little bit, I'm gonna bring it back to the right past that original position and just kind of get it in there. So we can go ahead and get rid of that last frame there just so we can kind of see what's happening. And I think this movement is overall pretty good, but there is that spot next to the bottom of the E where it kind of jumps out a little bit. It's not that smooth. We don't want that, so we can come in and fix it just like we did when we were adjusting the line boil. So I'll just zoom in here, see where it sticks out a little bit. I like to use the modifier with the brush so I can use that as an eraser so that I keep the texture of this brush. And I'll just smooth that out. Problem solved. So now we can play that and we say, yeah, that looks pretty good and no issues there. So now we can go ahead and draw this hand in. One thing that I would keep in mind as you're doing this is that each frame that you're drawing is just gonna be up for a fraction of a second. In this situation, animating at 12 frames per second, I guess I should have mentioned that. I think that's the default when you start animating frame by frame like this. That's sort of an animation default in general. Traditional film is 24 frames per second and animation is usually done on 2s, which means that each of those 24 frames is held for 2 frames. So you could just work at 12 frames per second and it would be essentially the same. But since you're only seeing it for a 1/12 of a second, if it's a little messy, it's gonna be okay. So I'm not drawing these hands perfectly, but they're pretty close. They're also pretty simple. And as the hand's moving, I think it's gonna look fun to maybe just have the fingers open up a little bit wider. So there's just more movement in that wave. Is this how we wave? I just think it's gonna give it a little more bounce, a little more rhythm. And I'm just redrawing that hand roughly the same size. Like, you know, I'm eyeballing it clearly, but I'm just matching it to that wrist point. And as it is going this way, I'm sort of leaning the fingers back the other way to give that momentum. Just the movement, like the fingers are just on for the ride. All right, so now we got our 6-frame loop. Let's play it and see. I feel like it's just got a lot more energy, a lot more character than the one where we just used the Liquify. I think it's pretty fun. Bye. Just kidding, we got another one to talk about. Okay, in this one I'm gonna show you some fun ways to use clipping masks in your animation and just ways that you can use the path and place things in Fresco to just make a lot of movement very quickly. So we need something to start with. Typed out the word wow and now converting it to a pixel layer so I can move it around a little bit. Just sort of make a somewhat interesting composition. Interesting enough for this demonstration. I guess it doesn't have to be that interesting, but you know. So we got this, and I think it would be better if we use this to like then make it a little bit looser and a little bit more bold so we have more surface area for our animation. So I'm just gonna take this structure that I made with a typeface, but then trace it over, extending it, making it a little bit wider, a little bit looser, and then closing up the spaces between the letter forms a little bit so it just takes up more surface area because we're gonna animate inside these letters. Wow, can you believe it? All right, so it's all filled in. We've got a bolder shape. This will be a good framework to put some stuff in. And I'm thinking, what if we just make it like a starry sky in there? Let's put some twinkle stars in there. You know, it sort of looks like we're looking out into the night anyway. So I'm just gonna make a new layer and just draw a simple twinkly little star, getting a little crazy, making a little highly rendered, just very realistic stars what I'm drawing here. And then I'm gonna go down to path. Let's add some multiples. Let's scatter them. We've got stars everywhere. And now let's make them move. So I want them to twinkle. So I take the grow shrink and then bring that down to 0. And that way it'll look like they're twinkling because they're gonna be disappearing. We'll put on randomize, make it so they're happening at different times. And then I'll just tap to make more groupings of these stars everywhere. And now we've just got all these stars twinkling in the sky. What if we had some shooting through? We could do that too. We could just draw a path through the whole thing. And now we've got the twinkling ones, and now we've got these other ones flying by the twinkles. We got full on Twinkle Town happening in these letters. And we just drew one little star. Look how quickly we did that. Now I mentioned clipping masks. what we can do is just clip this to this so it only happens within the words. So I put a purple background here so you can see what I'm talking about. That animation is just happening within those letters. So endless possibilities, lots of fun. Another way you could use this technique is with some texture to get a really unique look, sort of like a staticky look. So I'm gonna load my lettering as a selection and then make a new layer and use some texture brushes to fill in the letters and just have 3 of those. So it's sort of like a line boil. The Rezo brushes from my Retro Supply Co. pack, which I will link below, are perfect for this. I'll choose one of the textures for the first one, and then the second one, I'll choose, you know, a percentage from the second color. The Rezo colors are 3 different color brushes here, and they have 3 different textures. The key is to just do a different texture for each frame. And now we play this, we got this crazy static going on. Look at that, that's fun. I think it's fun. All right, let's do one more thing with the paths. We could do like a highlight that travels across. I think this is fun to do if you had like sunglasses on a character. We just draw this path. One thing you can do is turn on the grow shrink and make it get a little bit bigger as it goes. I like to use the ease in, ease out here so that it like starts off slow and then picks up speed and slows down. You'll notice here that it's not working that well because our path starts out too far, so we're missing out on the slow part. So I'll just tap on path and then you can transform the path and just make that path shorter. And now you'll see we get that effect a little bit better as it starts slow and then speeds up. It's still happening a little too fast. So what we can do is go down to frames in our menu and just pull that up and add more frames, and that'll allow it to go a little bit slower, a little bit more controlled. All right, let's do one more thing with the path, because I have this really fun wiggle brush in my Retro Supply Co. set that I want to use because I think it could be fun. So what I did is I made a new layer, filled it in with this wiggly pattern, and I'm making a bunch of frames, just duplicating it. And I'm gonna go in with the Liquify again, because I have an idea that I think is gonna work. So I'm gonna use the bloat, and I'm just gonna start pushing these wiggles, and I think it's gonna sort of make it wiggle around a little bit. It's already looking cool like this. So I'm just gonna go through and willy-nilly push these things around, and then we'll clip this to the letter forms, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think it's gonna be cool. But I think like the fact that you can animate within a clipping mask is super powerful and super easy to use. Look at that. That's kind of cool. It's a little jarring, but I think if we pair that with like a path where it's like gonna grow and shrink, maybe we can try and like rotate it a little bit. I think that could be pretty cool. But first, I'm gonna make my letters white so that we just see the wiggly pattern. And I think it's looking pretty cool. It looks better now that we don't have that black background behind it. But I think we can pair this frame by frame animation with a path, which is another amazing feature in Fresco. You can do a frame by frame animation like this and then put it on a path. You can imagine the possibilities. I have some other videos where I show you how you could have like a bat flapping its wings. You just have like 3 frames where it's like, and you put it on a path, flies across the screen. You could fill a sky with them. We're coming in here, gonna make it grow shrink a little bit, and then maybe we sway a little bit. And look at this, this is looking pretty cool. It's almost like it's water. Imagine if the letters were blue, and then it was like a little bit lighter blue. Could be cool. Path, masks, paths, masks, good stuff. You wanna do one more? Let's do one more. All right, I'm gonna show you how to smash the living out of your letters. We're gonna explode them. There's gonna be a huge explosion. They're gonna go. I'm gonna duplicate my layer here, and I'm gonna go in with the selection tool and just sort of randomly grab a selection and then move it out a little bit. You can just randomly do this all over the letter. You're just taking pieces and starting to move them out. I like to shrink them down a little bit as I move them. It helps a little bit with the separation. Another thing you can do instead of just making selections like this is to first erase out the shapes, especially if you do something like this with some texture. You'll notice with the selection tool, those areas where it separates is really smooth, which I'm not crazy about. So if I use the brush that I drew these letters with and then use the modifier to use that as an eraser, I can match that texture. So I could come in here and just sort of clean up those edges and make them a little bit more rough, make it look a little bit more like it's smashed, got hit with a giant Thor hammer. So instead of doing the selection thing, you could also come in and just erase out chunks and then grab those with the magic wand tool and move those out accordingly. So I like to just start with one frame like this where it's just everything is kind of like cracked and separating a little bit, and then blow it out completely. So now I'll go ahead and duplicate that layer And then I can take this and grab these pieces and push them out even further. And every time I take a piece and move it out, I like to shrink it a little bit, because the whole point in a looping animation, not the whole point, but one of the ways that you can make it loop is just by slowly getting rid of stuff so that you can start fresh and it loops endlessly. So also the idea of something exploding, like breaking into pieces, things are getting smaller as they go and they're getting further away, so they're getting smaller. So I'm moving things out, making them smaller. One thing you'll find when you start playing around with something like this is that you can really overdo it and have too many frames where they're separating. I'm trying to be mindful of that here. Oftentimes you only really need a few frames for the whole thing, because an explosion, things happen really fast. So I'm going in, breaking up things into even smaller pieces, and just, you know, smashing it up, shattering, exploding, moving things out. I find it to be a little bit easier to, instead of doing it this way, going in and just like drawing new pieces as they go, as opposed to taking these original pieces. But this is a really helpful way to start doing it, because you can not have to think about what it would look like as they explode, because you're just like taking these chunks and then moving them. So it takes a little bit longer, but it works. But once you've done this a few times, you could start to just do it frame by frame, where you're just like, okay, here's just pieces of this. And then experiment with like how much you can get away with, meaning like it's a flash. So like you could not do a very good job and it'll still look good, is what I'm trying to tell you here. So I'm just moving this stuff out, trying to move it as like a little bit different distances. Like some stuff could be a little bit, some stuff is further, because it's chaos, it's an explosion. You don't want it to be super consistent. Shrinking stuff down, moving it out. At this point, I'm realizing we got a lot of stuff and I want to sort of move it a little bit quicker and get things out. What I'm going to do here is transform this and just kind of make it bigger. And even though I keep saying I want everything to be smaller, I do, but I want it to be out further. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of come in and erase out some of this stuff to just make these pieces smaller after I move some of these things out, and just exaggerate it quite a bit more. And I'm just quickly scribbling on here, just trying to make smaller chunks out of these bigger things. And you know what? I'm gonna speed this up even more by leaning on that Liquify tool a little bit more and try some of these different options. I think maybe the warp could work, where we just sort of push some of these pieces out. Bloat actually could be kind of good, because we can just sort of have it coming out and may look like it's coming into our face, which is kind of cool. And then we could push with more control with the warp, where we can just sort of push this stuff out. And I think this is looking pretty good, but I am noticing it looks a little weird and a little different from the frame by frame. And I think we can fix that by just coming in here and just erasing some lines out of this to make it feel more like the pieces that we started with. And again, I'm doing this quickly and rough because it's fast. You don't need to go crazy on these frame by frames, because you're not gonna see them. No one's gonna see them. They're gonna go real fast. So on this next frame, I'm not even bothering looking at the previous frames, just because I know there's stuff everywhere and I just want a frame where it's just sort of like shrapnel a little bit. So I'm just drawing in random spots that are like leftovers going away. And it looks pretty good, but they're a little big. So I'm just gonna come in here and erase those a little bit, play that and see how that looks and see if it's better. So I think that's pretty good, but we can make it a little bit cooler by doing a little bit of exaggeration. So I'm thinking before it explodes, maybe the type swells a little bit. So using the bloat tool again. The Liquify tools are really a secret weapon for animation. They make stuff a lot easier. So I'm using the bloat to blow up the first one, and then the next one, I want to exaggerate that so it shrinks back and then explodes. So I just use the pucker on that one to shrink it down. So now it's like, if you will. And again, I think we need to exaggerate it even more. So I'm coming in here, blowing it up wider, puckering it a little bit more, and then smashing it to heck. Look at that. I think that looks pretty neat. What do you think? All right, so to make this thing loop, I'm gonna duplicate that first frame and then make 3 of those at the end, and then shrink it down real small on the first one. So maybe it just sort of grows out to that starting point. So we'll make that one small, and the next one, I'll do another small one, but a little bit bigger. So it's like a little bit of a transition. So it's like small, a little bigger, and then super big. So instead of going to the normal size, I want this last one to be even bigger, because when you want that sort of pop movement to make it really look good and exaggerated, you want to overshoot the size and then have it shrink back, and it just makes it look more dynamic and bouncy, just like a boom. And that's how you explode stuff. Now these sort of animations, as I mentioned, can be really fun for making like animated stickers to use on social media, or maybe on a website or something like that. I like to use these kind of things in my videos. You've seen them before. If you want to learn about how to do that, you're really going to need to watch this video where I walk you through that process so you know just the best way to do that. All right, good talk. Let me know what words you're going to animate in the comments. And if you do it and you post them somewhere, make sure to tag me because I want to check them out. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.